Hello, I'm Konrad Feldman, co-founder and CEO at Quantcast. We are the champions of a free and open internet and the creators of a new and innovative intelligence audience platform. We work with thousands of brands and publishers worldwide to help them better understand and engage their audiences online and empower those audiences to make more informed privacy choices. Today, our industry sits at a crossroads, and the future can appear far less certain than it was just a year ago. There are three major themes emerging that will be the focus of countless news articles and debates in the months ahead. These are identifying consumers in a world without cookies, the importance of first-party data, and consumer consent and the consumer's role in the open internet economy. I'm going to touch on all of these and outline how I think they'll impact our ability to thrive as an industry and the potential pitfalls ahead of us. But before we talk about the future, I want to briefly look back at how we got to where we are today. The internet democratized content distribution. For the first time in history, anyone with a phone line and a computer could create content, distribute it to the world, and find their audiences. For those audiences, this incredible new medium opened up a world of possibilities, a truly open internet. Today, 5 billion people around the world rely on the internet for information, communication, entertainment, education, and so much more. But in those early days, an insidious myth emerged, the internet's original sin, allowing everyone to believe that the internet and all of that diverse content is free. Yes, we let the world believe that all the diverse, vibrant content available to us all, wherever and whenever we wanted it, has no cost. The truth is that good content is often a labor of love, a product of the metaphorical and sometimes literal blood, sweat, and tears of creators, journalists, and storytellers. Of course, the economic model that funds most of this content is advertising. And on the face of it, life is good. Digital advertising has gone from strength to strength. Even in 2020, with all the challenges we faced, digital advertising was projected to have grown to over $1/3 of $1 trillion. That's a big number. For perspective, it's bigger than the gross domestic product of more than 2/3 of the world's countries. So, if advertising is the primary source of funding for the content and services that we all rely on, and the digital ad market has grown to $1/3 of $1 trillion, what's the problem? Power is the problem. For all the growth in digital advertising, most of the benefit accrues to just two companies. They've built effective services that we all use every day, drawing large, engaged global audiences and removing a lot of the friction when it comes to separating marketers from their budgets. The same diversity that makes the open internet such an awesome power also leads to complexity and inefficiency in reaching audiences consistently. And with that comes greater friction for marketers seeking returns from their investments. Where before there was chaos and confusion, a small number of now very large companies created a sense of order, a seemingly safe, predictable environment where brands can easily spend their budgets. This sense of predictability and control delivered these companies huge success and financial reward, and the vast majority of all new budgets spent on digital advertising. Yet these companies don't account for the vast majority of time spent online, nor do they account for the vast majority of the original content that we enjoy, the content that creators, journalists, and storytellers slave over to produce. So what? So what if a few successful companies have cracked the code and become rich along the way? What if the little guys, the independent content creators, the local newspapers have suffered? Bad luck. Things change, right? The problem with that way of thinking is that we're cheating our future selves. Outside the artificially curated worlds of the walled gardens, the environment is getting more hostile for content creators. The dominant platforms have a vice-like grip over a publisher's ability to access and create value from their audiences, and that vice is tightening. It's tough for independent publishers, and it's becoming harder for new voices to emerge. A less vibrant open internet favors the giant corporations. One clear loser have been local news outlets, which provide the essential last mile of information about the world around us. Our children won't thank us for handing them this world. They won't thank us for reducing the diversity of trustworthy sources of news and information. They won't thank us for concentrating the power over that information into the hands of a small number of large, powerful corporations. Just as biodiversity is a sign of a healthy natural environment, a diverse open internet is a sign of a healthy society. And if we don't act, we risk handing our children an intellectual crisis in addition to an environmental one. Investing in the open internet by directing more advertising budgets to a wider diversity of publishers should be a no-brainer. This is not simply some benevolent charitable effort. It's in a brand's best interest to maintain a broad range of options for reaching their target audiences. And it's these audiences that are at the heart of the open internet. They are more diverse, they are richer and more genuine than under the social spotlight of the walled gardens. Unfortunately, until now, reliably reaching a target audience across the highly fragmented world of the open internet has been so much harder than doing so in the walled gardens. The ad tech industry was born to solve this problem, but has also contributed to the confusion by creating a messy patchwork of vendors with competing claims that brands have struggled to unpick and tie back to genuine business results. And the opaque mix of companies has fostered wider distrust among consumers in the role of online advertising. Despite all of this, advertising technology underpins the financial viability of virtually every site that you rely on. And this technology is facing its biggest ever challenge. The last 3 years have seen the beginnings of change. First, the introduction of GDPR in Europe signaled a future in which every part of the internet ecosystem will require clear consent for consumers to use their data, whether that be for measurement, personalization, or advertising. Similar regulations have followed around the world. CCPA in California, LGPD in Brazil, PDPA in Thailand, and many more multi-letter acronyms to undoubtedly come. For Quantcast, GDPR aligned with our privacy-considered approach. As we became familiar with the compliance burden our publisher and marketer clients had to deal with, we created Quantcast Choice, a free consent management solution to help brands and publishers easily obtain the consent that they and their partners need to operate. Today, Quantcast Choice enables more consented programmatic advertising in Europe than any other solution. But the changes required to address GDPR and other privacy laws are simply the warm-up act. A post-cookie world is an even bigger challenge. Data protection regulators aren't the only ones who can penalize or shut down companies that don't play by their rules. The browsers wield arguably greater power as internet gatekeepers. And while new laws typically take years to implement, browsers like Apple's Safari have introduced new restrictions suddenly and with no opportunity for industry feedback. The same companies whose browsers dictate how advertising on the open internet can be delivered and measured also operate large media and advertising businesses themselves. They benefit when the open internet is harder to buy for brands. More ad budgets flow to them, even if this means less money to fund the original content and services that 5 billion people online enjoy without having to pay for subscriptions. This is why the demise of the third-party cookie is concentrating the minds of the industry. They have been the essential thread which connects our larger ecosystem today. From audience research to managing frequency and campaign measurement, most of the solutions that underpin the open internet economy rely on third-party cookies as an identifier to enable consistent comparison and analysis over time and across sites. The third-party cookie has been in decline for some time and is already largely gone from Apple's Safari browser. The impact of changes like this have huge ramifications for publishers. Today, Safari users are generally far less valuable to publishers than visitors from other browsers. Consumers using other browsers are effectively subsidizing the content for Safari users. Luckily for publishers, Safari represents the minority of internet users, and Google's Chrome is king. As you know, Google announced that they will be removing third-party cookies from Chrome in 2022. And in March this year, they also announced they will not support a class of emerging identity solutions designed outside of Google. With Chrome's larger market share and Google's dominant position in advertising technology, this has the potential to create a much bigger hole in the internet economy's funding. So, seismic changes are afoot. The future of the open internet is at stake, and we are entering a period of intense invention and reinvention. Specifically, first-party data, identity, and consent will all take on new importance and urgency, not just as nice to have, but as central, fundamental pillars of a sustainable open internet economy. So, the first of our 3 major trends, identifying consumers in a world without cookies. For the internet economy to continue to thrive, alternative identifiers for the third-party cookie will be essential. Precisely what these identifiers will look like remains an active area of research, though companies, including Quantcast, are working on solutions in addition to supporting industry-wide efforts. Whether or not you believe the browsers should have the power to decide the fate of the open internet, they will have a heavy influence on its future. The ultimate picture will only come into focus when we gain greater clarity from the browsers that currently dictate the rules. One thing that I think we can be fairly sure of is that the most scalable identity solutions will use a combination of ways to recognize audiences over time and between sites. The easiest way to determine if a particular internet user is a relevant prospect for your brand or campaign is to have a unique way to identify them and understand their behavior over time. Identifiers that provide this type of precision are referred to as being deterministic. Email addresses are an example, and they allow consumer behavior to be understood across browsers and devices over time and are immune from things like cookie deletion. This makes deterministic identifiers very valuable in delivering advertising and in measuring its impact. And as publishers and marketers increasingly recognize the importance of deterministic identifiers, you can expect to see more and more registration walls on your favorite sites. The problem is that apart from being frustrating, registration walls generally aren't very successful, and consumers are already tired of being repeatedly asked for consent. So deterministic data is great, but even with new solutions, you'll likely only have deterministic data for a fraction of the total online audience. So how will you fill in the gaps? Well, the next best thing for determining for sure that you're reaching the right audience is to know with a high degree of confidence you're probably reaching the right audience. These are called probabilistic identifiers, and they use statistical analysis to estimate that a set of activities likely relates to the same user or set of users. Not even the walled gardens, with their clear scale advantages, can rely on deterministic data alone, and they make extensive use of probabilistic identifiers in many of their advertising solutions. Probabilistic is not perfect, but even with enough reliable data and sophisticated modeling, probabilistic approaches can be very effective in understanding audiences. So effective that we've been able to power one of our core products, Quantcast Measure, using probabilistic data for more than a decade. Today, with insights from more than 100 million internet destinations, Quantcast Measure is the largest probabilistic model of the open internet, creating considerable value for the publishers who use it to better understand their audiences, curate content, and win advertising budgets. Any identifier needs data with it to be useful. And this brings us to our second theme, the importance of first-party data. Much of the growth in programmatic advertising has been based on the use of so-called third-party data, often sold by data brokers and bought by brands to help with their campaigns. Third-party data is data that has been captured and classified by someone other than yourself, the third party. Third-party data can be unreliable. It's often old and inconsistent, and increasing privacy legislation and browser actions will only exacerbate these problems. More and more companies are reading the tea leaves. Oracle Data Cloud, probably the largest third-party data broker in the world, stopped offering its third-party data in Europe this past September. The truth is, first-party data, data that is directly collected by your organization and subsequently used by you for measurement and decision-making, has always been superior to third-party data. It's fresher, it's more accurate, it's more trustworthy. First-party data is the critical ingredient in tomorrow's open internet economy. Now let's talk about the last of the three core elements to future-proofing your business: consumer consent and the consumer's role in the open internet economy. Consumer consent is not a new concept for many of you, especially if you have audiences and operations in Europe. But still, the majority of sites today don't have a consent management solution and are on the wrong side of GDPR. This will change as enforcement ramps up and as there is more active scrutiny of consent in all internet transactions. Economic carrots typically get a faster response than regulatory sticks. And when publisher monetization abruptly drops or an advertiser's retargeting stops working, we'll see a big uptick in the adoption of consent management solutions. And this means businesses are going to have to explain to consumers what data they need and why, and ask for consent. And they'll have to allow consumers to change their mind. We know consumers value free content and that society benefits greatly from it. It's also likely that many consumers don't fully appreciate that all that free content that they enjoy is largely funded by advertising. And so while it might be uncomfortable, perhaps it is time to confront that original sin and have an honest conversation. Regardless of what the future holds, we cannot take the open internet for granted, and it is worth fighting for. Quantcast has been at the forefront of developing innovative solutions for the open internet for over a decade, and we welcome this challenge. In March, we unveiled the Quantcast platform, a new intelligent audience platform for the open internet. The Quantcast platform provides the first fully integrated suite of planning, activation, measurement, and insights tools for audience-centric advertising on the open internet. Traditional ad tech stacks and processes are overly complex, and practitioners spend way too much time navigating technical complexity, managing fragile handoffs, and translating manual configurations and optimizations between systems. By providing advanced technologies for all brands, agencies, and publishers, we see a future where the playing field is leveled and empowered companies can thrive on the open internet, creating, for the first time ever, true alternatives to the walled gardens. There's a lot of work to be done in our near future, but when that work will lead to a healthy and sustainable, diverse and equitable open internet, it's work that it's worth us all doing together. And as the world slowly rebounds from the COVID pandemic, digital media and advertising will play a leading role in the recovery. The road ahead will likely have some unexpected turns, but it can, and I believe it will, lead to a brighter future. To summarize, change is coming, and successful digital publishers and marketers will require new solutions to identify consumers in a world without cookies, to better leverage first-party data, and to engage consumers in their role in the internet economy and ensure valid consent. When we combine these with easy-to-use media solutions for planning, activation, and measurement, then the open internet can offer advertisers the same benefits of scale, performance, and simplicity as the walled gardens. And when we do this, publishers will capture a fairer share of the advertising spend to fund the rich and diverse content that we all enjoy. That's the opportunity that's ahead of us, and it's something we should all care about. This vision requires that every publisher, every marketer, and the technology companies that support them work together to make it a reality. We're excited to partner with all of you and build the Rebel Alliance for the open internet. We'd love to hear from you, and you can reach me at kfeldman@quantcast.com. Thank you.